Welcome to week 4 of our series that we've been in called Defining Decade. And the whole premise of this series is simple. We believe that the young adult stage, the 10 years that you're going to park yourself here at Young Adult Land, we believe that this is one of the most, if not the most pivotal times in your life. That if you, as a young adult today, if you set the course and trajectory of your life in a way that honors God, that serves people, that takes the truths of God's word, and you actually shape and mold your life when you're different than you were before, we believe that you could set yourself up for a rich and satisfying life. We've been saying it like this, that what you do between 18 and 30 will either lay the foundation of a rich and satisfying life, or it will create the kind of hole that it takes you years to dig out of. Years to dig out of. And tonight, what we're going to be talking about is something that I believe is one of the most important things that we have to nail when it comes to having a defining decade where you're defining it by goodness and satisfaction and honoring God and setting yourself up for the long haul of faith. There's one thing that's kind of like a cheat code that's either going to take you further away from God or it's going to bring you closer to Him, and it's this: the person you marry. The person you marry. You see, it matters who you marry. One of the biggest indicators of whether or not you're going to make it the long haul as a Christian is the person that you marry. You know, I talk to many people who are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, and they will tell me once they learn that I'm a part of young adult ministry, what they will say to me is they'll say, hey, I did not nail this, and I have the scars to prove it. Tell the young adults that it matters who they marry, that don't ignore red flags, to make sure that they're doing everything they need to do in order to make the best decision possible in here. And now they're dealing with the consequences of a marriage that is way harder than it probably should be. And so tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what are the things, if this is the case, if who you marry really matters, then how as young adults are we to start to look around and see potential dating relationships, potential marriage relationships? What are we to look for in those things? And so tonight I have 5 things that I think you need to look for when you're trying to find someone to marry that will be a blessing to you and help you honor God and serve Him for the rest of your life. So we're just going to dive in tonight. Is that cool? So if you have your notes, take it out. We're gonna get going. Number 1, here's the first thing that you need to do if you are trying to live a rich and satisfying life of faith. Number 1, you need to find someone who will be a good parent. Find someone who's going to be a good parent. You know, we see all throughout Scripture, especially in the Old Testament, we see very direct instructions as about what parents are supposed to do with their children. I'm going to read a few examples to you. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 6, it says this: "And these words that I command to you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them," talking about children, "teach them diligently to your children, and then you shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise." What is the first thing that we understand what it means to be a parent? You need to understand that as a parent, you need to teach your children diligently the ways of the Lord. So here's a question. Are you dating someone, or are you going to date someone who will one day have the ability to teach your future children in the way of God, in the way of the Lord? Ephesians chapter 6, verse 4 in the New Testament, it says, "Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in discipline, instruction of the Lord." Here's a question that you need to understand if you're looking for a partner. Will your future partner, when you become parents, will they be able to control themselves and not provoke your children? Will they have the self-control to not just the children will do something to offend you and you just not want to offend them back? Will they have that ability? This is really important. We see also in Psalm chapter 127, verse 3, it says, "Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord, the fruit of a womb of a reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior are the children of one's youth." here's a good question if you want to determine if this person's going to be a good parent or father or mother for you. Do they look at children as a blessing? Do they see a child and not think, oh, this is a lot of work. This is going to be a long 18 years. Or do they look at the child that God has given you guys in the future and say, wow, God has given, this is a heritage from God. This is a blessing from God. Will they accept this responsibility and like arrows in the hands to be shot out into the next generation? Like, do they look at these things that way? Listen, in our world now, like there's a lot of, it's like culturally okay to be like, I don't want kids. In the newest season of Love is Blind that my wife made me watch, at the very end, I don't know if you saw this, but at the very end they were talking to one of the family members of the contestants, and they said, and she had children, and she said, if I could go back, I don't think I would have children. If I would go back if I could just like totally redo it. Anyone else see that? Raise your hands. You're a sinner. You watched that show. You watched that show. But it's insane, like this idea that people don't want to carry the responsibility. They don't see it as a beautiful, beautiful responsibility. It's amazing. And here's an interesting thing when you think about who you're going to marry, and when you think about parenting specifically, think about this. Do you realize, and you might have realized this, do you know that often you actually become like your parents? How many of you guys have noticed that? How many of you guys are terrified of that idea? How many of you guys are like pumped about that? Some people are pumped, some people are terrified. That's okay. But here's the deal. Some people, like a lot of people, you actually end up becoming a lot like your parents. I find myself on a regular basis making jokes that my wife will turn to me and she goes, your dad makes that kind of joke all the time. And I go, oh my goodness. Am I that old? Am I okay? Then I think, okay, my dad's a good man. I go through all these existential crises, then I'm back in the conversation. But here's a real thing that we have to think about if we're going to evaluate people that we're dating that we could marry. Here's the thing. You need to understand that even the good and even the bad, some of the sins that you have in your life, that is habits that have formed you in the way of the world rather than the way of God, do you know that oftentimes you pass down your bad habits? That and not in like this mystical way, but in like your children will notice what you do and often emulate it. You know what I'm saying? It's a really interesting thing. It's a really interesting thing. We see this even in godly families, like you see in the story of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the patriarch of our faith, a godly family, but not without its own drama, not without its own sin. Even in a godly family like this, we saw that Abraham, when he was with this king, he noticed Abimelech. He was afraid that this king was going to take his wife, and so he lied to the king and said, she's my sister. And he kind of started this thing of deceit that his family would then dip into throughout the generations. We noticed that his son Isaac also did the exact same move. He also showed this same kind of deceit. And then it culminated with Abraham's grandson, Jacob. And Jacob had the greatest deception by stealing his brother's blessing, his birthright. You see, children are formed by what they see modeled. And obviously, God can redeem anything. And if you give anything over to the Lord, He can change everything. You can actually be the start of a new good family line with good, healthy habits. Like, absolutely, that can start. But you need to remember when you're dating someone and you're evaluating them to see if they're going to be a good parent or not, you just need to look at them and say, would I be okay if my kid turned out like him? Would I be okay if my kid turned out like her? And for some of you, this is a clarifying conversation because some of you are like, okay, that this person I've been texting, I need to stop texting immediately because I do not want to replicate this in them. That would be a bad thing. And yeah, who's your child going to become? Because remember, we don't date on potential, we date on past performance. A lot of us in this room, this is the typical thing, and this is not new information. We've been talking about this anytime we talk about dating, to not date on potential, because this is a potential. He could be so good. He has such a great heart. Like he's really, like I see something in him that could flower into something good. But how many of you know that potential doesn't always equal actuality? So if you're a woman, a man of wisdom, you need to look at every relationship in your life, and especially this dating relationship. And if you want to evaluate this person, if you want to keep going on this dating relationship, you need to say, based on your past performance, how you've interacted with me, can I trust that you're going to continue this moving forward? Because again, it's the habits that form us every single day that make you into the person that you are. So you got to make sure, a good thing you have to understand is find someone who can be a good parent. Find someone who can be a good parent. Number 2, find someone that you can go through hard times with. You know, many of you in this room, by God's grace, one day will stand at an altar like this, and you're going to be looking into your spouse's eyes, and you're going to covenant together, and you're going to say something like this. You're going to say, I take you to be my lawfully wedded husband or wife, to have, if you know it, you can say it with me, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, until the day that death does us part. This is such a beautiful covenant that married couples get to share together. It's an amazing, amazing thing. And this covenant reflects I think a strong biblical reality here. That you are not simply choosing a spouse based on ease. You are choosing a spouse to be a co-laborer in suffering. If you notice the vows in a marriage ceremony, they don't always say, you're super hot right now. I like hanging out with you. When we have a good time, it's amazing. The end. No, because that's superficial. That's going to be ebbing and flowing. Having a good time with people in your life is you're going to be really mad at your spouses sometimes. They're going to be really mad at you. You're not always going to be as attractive as you think you are. Things are going to be difficult. There's going to be financial pressures. And what I love about the marriage vows, because it reflects the reality that we all are going to go through stuff. And what you're looking at your person and you're saying, you know what? No matter what may come, no matter the storms of this life, I choose to hold on to you. Are you going to pick someone who's going to be okay holding back on to you? You know, I have a friend whose grandpa, who was a widower, and in his old age, he got this girlfriend who's also a widow. So these two old people are dating, and they dated for like a long time. I don't know why they never tied the knot, but you can kind of know why after this story. They dated for a long time. My friend, she said that, you know, she was like a second grandma to the whole family. And, you know, they would go on the vacations, with family vacations to Florida together. Like it was like she was a part of the family. And then one day, her grandfather got cancer. And as soon as the cancer diagnosis happened, the widow lady who had been dating this person left. She's like, I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to deal. I'm done. I'm out of here. And she wasn't ready for what she signed up for. And dating right now is going to be fun and exciting, and it should be. You should have a lot of fun when you date. But listen to me. Sooner rather than later, hard times are going to come. Hardship will happen. And you have to figure out if the person that you're dating is I'm going to be with you in the trenches kind of marriage partner, or I'm going to have to be dragging you with me. We're going to have separate time. Like, are you going to be together, or are you going to be separate? This is a really important thing you got to ask. We know that things are going to happen. In 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 12, Peter says, Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery trial when it comes upon you to test you, as though something strange were happening to you. Many people look at suffering as a strange phenomenon. They're like, oh my goodness. Why is life hard? And no one has ever said, we've to believe this lie that life should be easy and everything should be fine and sweet. But you know this, if you've lived any sort of life, that life is not always peaches. It's hardships. He says, but rejoice insofar as you shared in Christ's sufferings, that you may also rejoice and be glad when his glory is revealed. I love the wisdom of Ecclesiastes. And think about this when it's related to the person that you're dating, to see if this person will be a blessing to you. In Ecclesiastes chapter 4, it says, two are better than one because they have a good reward for their toil. For if one falls, one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who is alone when he falls, and is not another to lift him up. Again, if two lie together, they can keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, two will withstand him. A threefold cord is not quickly broken. You know, this passage isn't overtly about marriage. It's about community, making sure that you're with the right people. But it absolutely can be applied to a marriage relationship. You need to understand, like, two are better than one because they're not easily broken. You need to understand that when you have someone, you have a partner, that when you fall, they don't look at you and condemn you. They come in the dirt with you and pick you back up. This is something that's better than so many other things in life. I also love the wisdom literature of Proverbs. It says, a friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. Do you know that when you go through something with someone, there's a chance that you gain like a close-knit brother? Have you ever gone through something with someone and you're like, weren't as close, but then it just brings you really close and you're like, that's my bro, that's my brother, that's my sister? You know, the same is true in marriage. When you go through things together, there's an opportunity for even greater intimacy to be had, because you've gone through stuff. And we need to not be ignorant to the fact that we are going to go through stuff. And we have to remember that. If you date purely based on looks or money or whatever, you've misunderstood the assignment of what marriage is. You need to find someone you can go through hard stuff with, because you're going to. And when you get to the moment, it's really hard to dig your well as you're thirsty. You got to dig your well before you're thirsty. So how are you looking and evaluating the people that you're dating? You got to make sure that they are people that you can go through hard times with. Number 3, find someone who genuinely followed Jesus and is committed to his people. Find someone who genuinely follows Jesus and are committed to his people. This seems like a really obvious one, but honestly, this is one of the biggest red flags when someone claims to be a Christian, but they don't have a church, / they're not connected or consistent to a church, or they don't serve in church, or they don't have the people they belong to in church. I've heard people say, he's got a good heart. He doesn't really go to church. He doesn't really go to church, but I know he has a relationship with Jesus. You're like, that's great. I love that. But one of the best ways to show what you love is what you do, right? And if you are someone because you can't really evaluate the heart, right? Only God can know the heart. But what we can do is we can see the fruit that comes from a heart. Jesus says the treasury of a good heart produces good things. Treasury of a bad heart produces bad things. We can only grade someone as so much as they do and say and act. But we do need to look for people who show that they love God based on the things that they do. And if you're not with God's people, doing what God says you need to do, I would say there needs to be a pause there. 2 Corinthians, you probably heard this before if you've been in church at any time. 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 14, Paul says, do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. For what partnership has righteousness with lawlessness? Or what fellowship has light with darkness? You probably heard this before. And this is a hard passage. And I think there's 2 reasons why this passage is really hard for people, even church people. One, here's the reason I think it's really hard. One, I think many people claim to be believers that aren't really believers. So, on dating apps, you can say what religion you are, and you can say you're a Christian, but can you believe that person is a Christian solely based on their app? No, you can't. You can't. You have to actually do some investigating to figure out if this person really is a Christian or not. Because it's really easy to be a cultural Christian in America. You can even be from a Christian family and not a Christian. So you got to explore, okay, is this person actually a Christian? So one of the reasons this verse is hard is because you could actually be unequally yoked to someone who claims to be Christian. Does that make sense? The second reason why I think this is a hard verse to swallow, because number two, we don't want to offend anybody. This verse is offensive. Do you hear this, the language of this verse? You know, when I was younger, I think I would try to downplay some of the harsh language of the Bible in order to try to win people over and be like, no, it's okay. It's like, just, you don't need it, whatever. And I would try to be God's PR person, which is never a good move. Just say what God says. But here's what you need to say. Paul is saying that if you're a Christian, it is not good to date a non-Christian. He just says that. And he uses two images that are really good images. He says it's like righteousness and lawlessness together. Like, that doesn't make any sense. It's like light and dark together. Here's what this means. That if you are a Christian dating a non-Christian, that means that you are righteousness and he is lawlessness. If you are a Christian dating a non-Christian, that means that you are light and she is dark. That seems like a really harsh judgment to put on people. We don't do this to condemn anyone. Paul is talking to Christians. And he's saying, this is not about them. This is about you. This is about you. You need to listen to me. If you marry someone who is a non-believer or simply apathetic towards their faith, don't be deceived. You're going to be impacted by this. You just are. I found some studies when I was studying for this, kind of asking, because I wondered, I'm like, okay, when there's someone who is a Christian and a non-Christian, when they get together, what typically happens? Does a Christian tend to go to the side of the non-Christian more and lose their faith, or does the non-Christian tend, on average, to go towards the Christian and become a Christian? And this is what, across a couple studies of the sociology of religion, they found that when one spouse is non-religious, the religious partner is significantly more likely to reduce the religious commitment over time. This is what they found. Belief system in marriage tend to move toward what is practiced together, not just what is believed individually. Did you hear that? Meaning that it's not good enough if you want to live a life of faith with the rhythms that we've been talking about in this series, trying to live a life of faith to the end. You cannot do it just by saying that you're a Christian. You got to have the practices and disciplines and rhythms in your life to do so. And if you get up together, if you marry somebody who is not really a Christian or an apathetic Christian or whatever, you generally, it won't work out for you. It won't. So listen, you need to make sure that you find somebody that you don't have to drag to church with you. Find somebody that won't freak out and be furious when you want to sacrificially give your money. Find somebody who is not mad when you spend some hours of your week serving. Find someone who is doing these things already, who is on the path of faith, and just say, let's get together. Because you never want to have to be dragging your partner with you. That rarely ever works. So you got to find someone who genuinely follows Jesus, but who is committed to his people. Number 4, find someone who is affirmed by wise and godly community. Proverbs 11, verse 14. Again, a lot of this is wisdom that we can use to apply to dating and apply to marriage. It says this: where there is no guidance, a people fall, but in abundance of counselors, there is safety. How many of you guys have ever seen anybody who, this person is part of your friend group, they're really active, but all of a sudden they got this secret boyfriend or secret girlfriend, and then boom, they're like not there anymore? Raise your hand if that's been an experience that you've seen. Okay, a couple people in the room. Listen, that would be called dating in isolation. And I've heard people talk about this. I've heard people say, you know what, I didn't want to I wanted to get to know this person way before I introduce him to my people because I got to work some things out. To that I say, you are a terrible judge of evaluating this person if you're doing this all by yourself. Because as we know, we've talked about this before, when you are at the beginning stages of a relationship, do you know that everything that person does is like charming? You know? Everything they do, everything they like, you're like, oh my gosh, he likes pizza. I like pizza too. Oh my gosh, I think he's the one. Everything that, you have the infatuation goggles on. And listen, you blow past red flags with the infatuation goggles on. But you know who doesn't blow past red flags? Your friends, your parents, your pastors, your team members, all these different people. And listen, you got to just get used to, instead of figuring out if you whatever with this person by yourself for a long time. Obviously, there's got to be some time where you got to figure out if you like this person or not. But you got to bring this person around. Let the people who love you, who are godly, who are wise, who love you and love God, let them help you make a wise and good decision. Don't date in isolation. I'm not saying that you need the approval of every single person in your life. I'm not saying that at all. But I am saying find a good friend, find a family member, find some wise people in your life, and just have the confidence and bravery to say, hey, I'm giving you permission. What do you see? Do you see any red flags? Am I overlooking something? Because they said they like pizza and I like pizza too. Am I overlooking this? This is what you need to do. This is what you need to do. And God wants the best for you. He set up these structures in our lives as Christians of the church and his people to help you, to guide you, to give you wisdom. And oftentimes, some of the greatest examples of the voice of God in my life have been people speaking to me, that love God, and they've helped me. And I've known some people in my life who started talking to some person and began dating them, and then there were some major red flags that this person didn't totally see, and they said, "Hey, I just have to reflect this to you." And then that person in my life, to their credit, said, "Okay, I hear that, and I'm done. I'll be done with this." Listen, this is a big deal. Marriage is such a big deal that these drastic things that some of you are prickling up against are like, oh, why would I include other people in this? It's such a big deal for your future and your faith. We've got to do this. And then number 5, lastly, you got to find somebody who seeks reconciliation. Find somebody who seeks reconciliation. You see, there's a type of person that's never wrong. You need to do your best to avoid these people. There's a type of person who, when you confront them or you try to bring something up to them, they start sobbing, and then they major on the way that you're currently making them feel over the situation that they put you through. You need to do your best to avoid dating these people. Because listen, if you can't have a real conversation with someone without throwing out accusations, without sobbing immediately and going into defense mode, then how are you going to be able to get through a difficult life? You know, there's a theme all throughout the scriptures that God is trying to establish in the people who follow him, and it's this theme of reconciliation. We have a bunch of verses here on the screens. And these verses, I'm not going to read all of them to you, but you can see them. Pull them up. There's so many instances where, as a Christian, the most important thing that you need to do, more so than giving offering, more so than anything, you need to go, and if there's something wrong between you and a brother, you need to go and you need to reconcile between you and that brother. You need to be kind and compassionate. You need to be meek and patient. You need to forgive other people. A job of a believer is to just constantly forgive. to forgive and to seek reconciliation, and to forgive and to seek reconciliation, and to forgive. I love Romans 12, verse 18. It says, if possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. You see, one of the core responsibilities of a Christian is to reconcile. You know, the word reconcile, I love this definition. It means renewed friendship after disagreement or enmity. A renewed friendship after disagreement or enmity. 2 Corinthians 5, 18 through 20, it talks about this idea that God reconciled himself to us, and now that God is reconciled to us, he's therefore given us the ministry of reconciliation with other people. Like your responsibility now, if you are in Christ, if there is something amiss between you and another person, it is your duty as a follower of Jesus to go and humbly come to them, and you guys come together both in humility, say, we got to work this out. I sinned against you. I'm sorry. Would you forgive me? Wouldn't that be a basis of a great marriage? You know, it matters who you marry because a Christian ought to be renewing friendship every day. I love that term, renewing friendship. That's reconciliation, renewing friendship. You know, my little brother has Down syndrome, and he's one of the biggest blessings in our life. And he's such a, you know, he's so funny, and he's so like emotionally in tune. And, you know, there are times where we can get out of whack with each other. But I'm one of 5 siblings, and so we have 4 siblings that can, you know, whatever it may be, we can offend each other, we can do something, and that's what happens when you have siblings. And my brother, when he would do something wrong or we did something wrong, and there was kind of this weird tension that happens before the reconciliation. Have you guys living in that now with any relationships of yours? My brother, it like eats at him, and he's just like, bro, we got to talk. We got to talk. And then we talk this through, and with great humility, he will apologize, or one of the siblings will apologize. And after they work this thing through, he will go, fresh. Fresh. That's what reconciliation is. And listen, as a married couple, you're going to have moments where you offend this person. You're going to say something that you should have never said. You're going to do something you never should have done. And you need to have this like drive. As soon as there's some weirdness and tension between the two, you need to be going to that person and saying, hey, I don't know how to talk about this. We got to figure this out though. And at the end of that thing, you may not say it, but you feel, You know, I've told you this story a million times, but it's my life, and you get to hear me talk a lot, so you're going to hear a lot of the same stories. But I knew that I could marry Kyla when we were dating. There was this one moment that I knew for sure. I'm like, okay, I can do it. I can marry this person. It's after a big fight that we had. We didn't have any fights. Like we're one of those couples that like we literally like never disagreed on anything. And then one day we had this like huge fight. I don't even remember what it's about. And we said some things that I think hurt each other. And then the next day, I was like, you know, feeling like, oh, I hate this tension. And before I could do anything, I didn't initiate this. Kyla came to me and she goes, hey, and great humility, like different, like very soft. And she was very harsh, and we were both very harsh to each other the night before. And she comes as it's like different person, like Spirit of God, like all over her. Saying, hey, I was wrong when I said this. I should have never said that to you. I'm so sorry. Can you forgive me? And I'm like, well, I was wrong too. I shouldn't have said that either. Will you forgive me? And we had kind of this mutual submission, this mutual humility where we came together and we made things right, and we were fresh. And it was in that moment that I'm like, oh, if this is the way that she handles disagreement, I'm locking this down. I'm going to marry this girl. Because we can go through anything. We can go through anything together if that's the case. So if you're in here, if you're looking for who you're going to marry, that would honor God, that would help you live a life of faith for the long haul, you need to be pursuing someone who pursues reconciliation. You need to be pursuing someone who practices forgiveness. You need to be pursuing someone who initiates peace, because in marriage, conflict is guaranteed, but this becomes the non-negotiable. Like, we're going to work these things out. We're not going to sweep things under the rug. We're going to have reconciliation. See, you got to marry someone that you're going to be able to go to battle with, not someone you have to battle. And that distinction will create in you a marriage that can get through anything. But it matters who you marry. It really does. And my heart for every single one of you in this room is that you would find a godly wife, a godly husband, who would love you, who would display a lot of these attributes that we talked about. Because it's a great blessing. And Proverbs says, he who finds a wife is blessed and finds life. Like this, the Lord is the one who's going to give this to you if it's his will for you. But my challenge to you guys as well is, in the meantime, when you haven't found the person that you're going to marry, don't shortchange the process and allow things that you would have never allowed because you're impatient. Trust in the Lord. Hold on for the right one, because it's better to spend 10 less years with the right one than to spend 10 more years with the wrong one. God wants to give you a rich and satisfying life. And this is the cheat code if you want to do it. Marrying the right person, because the wrong person will take you far away from God. Would you pray with me?